ultimately, it probably, when you play it back, it probably wasn't the way you would wished it to have gone. 10 managers in 10 years.
Yeah.
And of course, you didn't hesitate to pull the trigger and make change. Looking back in it now, Simon, the benefit of hindsight, was that the right approach? And I'll take you into another territory after you tell me why.
Well, it wasn't 10, it was 8.
It was 8.
Yes, I think it was, because I think there's too much mythology about how much stability you should give a manager and how long a manager should be given an opportunity to be successful and how much time and how much support they should be given. If you've got somebody into a job and they're clearly not going the right way after a reasonable amount of time, and reasonable is all relative, but in the football world, it's years and years and years and just keep on going the same way. I tended to have about 18 months to 2 years. I know it doesn't, if you look at the averages, it doesn't look that way because over 10 years, you can't make 18 months or 2 years fit into 10 years.
Yeah.
But there were reasons why managers went quicker at the beginning and tended to stay longer at the end. Neil Warnock was with me for 2.5, 3 years. Steve Bruce resigned and had to be garden leaved after 4 months. You put those into the equation and you've got two ends of the same conversation. If you haven't got a manager going the right way within 12 months and giving you the indication that you've got enough confidence to keep on taking a leap of faith in either investing or believing in what they're doing, then there should be no difference from this than any other business. Every business is made up of human beings doing a job and having all the challenges of their personal life and the physicality in sport or the mental approach in business. And people are either effective or they're not. And if you want to put top guys into top jobs, they can make changes relatively quickly and you can see the progress. So with me, I looked at it when Trevor Francis was manager. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Trevor Francis took over from Steve Bruce. We were top of the league. He took us to 13th in the table. At the end of the season, I gave him another year because he was there for 6 months. Had another year, took us to 11th. I then said, this is not Premier League football. This is not what I wanted. What are we going to do? I want you to write me a blueprint. I want you to write me a roadmap of how that we're going to progress, what we need in every single area.
Yeah.
Besides the gormless looks of not understanding what I was asking for, what I got was more of the same. Well, more of the same has got me going nowhere. So if more of the same is the answer, then no thank you. So I made choices based upon what I was actually looking at. Now, if we're going to equate this into other people...
Well, we're going to.
Right,
we're going to, because we're going to look at Watford. Just
Okay.
in the passing, when you got to the Premier League, how many managers did you have in the Premier League? Did you...
No, just
in one season, that season.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would have liked to have fired Ian at the beginning of that time.
So you start with
but
the
I didn't
same
have
one.
the balls, yeah.
Right,
I didn't have the balls to do it.
So it's fair to say it looks as if it's not working out at Watford for Roy. And he was brought in to firefight an attempt to keep
anyway,
them.
wasn't he?
He was well, exactly.
Yeah.
So Roy was the third of 3 managers in one season under the Pozzo family. First off was Cisco Munoz, then Claudio Ranieri, and now Roy Hodgson. I mean, at the end of the day, Simon, is this proof that the Pozzo's way of doing it, our way or the highway, you can't sack your way to safety?
If you want to look at it that way, or you can look at it an alternative way, Watford have been in the Premier League 7 years out of the last 10 on the basis of a transfer spend. They've been in the Premier League between 2015 and 2020, and they've been in, so it might be 6 years. So 6 years out of the last 10 years they've been in, and maybe even more. But I'll just say 60% of the time.
Yeah.
Why do Watford have a God-given right to be in the Premier League? What do Watford spend under their spend pattern to stay in the Premier League? I suspect it's far less than anybody else. So with that in mind, aren't you suggesting that Watford have done fantastically well under their model? Because I'm sure there's plenty of teams like Nottingham Forest and teams like Sheffield Wednesday and Sunderland and other teams that have gone into the Championship and never come back again, Coventry, and have not occupied the same opportunities that Watford have. So if you look at it and say, well, actually, Watford have got into the Premier League 60 to 70% of the time over the last decade. What else would they have done?
So you're saying their way works for them?
I'm saying that their way works for them. I think they should question some of their appointments, not the way they dispatch them, because I think everybody sat there and went, Claudio Ranieri, did you not watch what happened at Fulham?
Right.
So everybody went, well, let's have a think about that. And you look at some of the other appointments, and there's some curious ones in there when they took out Nigel Pearson very close to the end of the season when he seemed to have gotten. But there are also some of these personalities are not easy to manage. Look, I don't think that it's ideal to have 3 managers in the season, but I think the middle appointment was the flawed one. They got a guy that came in, took them up, didn't seem to have the chops for the Premier League, so they took him out, which is not unusual for people to do. It's pretty standard form. Coming out of the Championship, you don't know whether they're going to be a Premier League manager. They get into the Premier League and you find out within reason that they haven't got it. and then you change to someone else, and that should be the change that you make. But they changed to Claudio Ranieri, which was not a good change.
Sure.
So Roy Hodgson might have been the better change at that time, but they weren't quite in the situation that they're in now. I think the characterisation of it is probably wrong. Does this vindicate that you can't sack your way to success? Well, everybody that's unsuccessful sacks somebody. Depends when you consider yourself to be unsuccessful. This is the conundrum. Rafa Benitez got sacked because he was considered to be unsuccessful for a variety of different reasons at Everton. And you could argue now that the success that Frank Lampard has is actually less than the success that Rafa Benitez was having.
But as a newly promoted club, do you sack 3 managers? This is my point.
Well, they were an experienced Premier League operator. If you've been in the Premier League for 6 years out of...
They're not an established Premier League.
No, they're not. They were in the Premier League between 2015 and 2020. So they were there for 5 years. So they have an experience. The ownership model has an experience. They're not the most experienced, but they are an experienced Premier League operator. They know what it looks like. They know what it feels like. They know what staying in a division can involve. They know what going to an FA Cup final looks like. They know what buying players, hiring managers looks like. They know what the landscape looks like, because they're not just walking in like a couple of wetbacks, not knowing what they should be doing, where they should be doing it.
Curiously, the Pozzos must look at Burnley and think, well, they got it right. I mean, look at it. Stability. Sean Dyche. They may end up going down. Of course, there is a serious danger of that.
And how long have Burnley been down before?
But it's the stability that you want, though, isn't it, Simon? Well, that's what you probably crave for at Palace. Stability. Give me stability.
Stability on the basis of someone going in the right direction is absolutely right. If you've got somebody and you can see it, and if you're close enough to your manager and you're close enough to what he's trying to achieve, and you can see the improvements and you know that they're coming and you know that you've got faith in what they're doing, if you're looking at some of these gormless numpties that get put into management jobs that don't get the outcomes but sit there with the expectation that the industry says, now give him more stability. It's mythology. It's self-serving, self-perpetuating crap. Sometimes these managers aren't just good enough, and they do need to be taken out before they make it even worse for you. Now, of course, we're sitting in a situation where Watford took out their manager and they're still going to get relegated. Now, they might have put anybody in there and they would have got relegated. They had a choice to make. I'm not saying that the Pozzos do it right or wrong, but I'm saying that there are lots and lots of clubs. Only 20 teams can get in the Premier League. Watford don't have a God-given right to be in there.
No.
How long have Burnley been in there since they last got relegated?
7,
5-6 years?
But 7. Yeah.
7 years. So they get relegated now.
And you're right. No one's got a God-given right to be in there.
The only way you're going to stay in the division is spend a lot of money. And even that doesn't guarantee you. So they didn't spend a lot of money. They don't spend a lot of money. They got Marco Silva in. Marco Silva left of his own accord. They gave Marco Silva some support. They backed him. They got their players taken away like Richarlison. It's a difficult conundrum for Watford. I'm not apologising for them, because it is an extreme version of something like me, which is basically, I've seen what you do. I've seen what you are. You're not good enough. Get out, and I don't want to hear all the football crap about how long people should be given stability for.
Is that how you did it?
Well, kind of, yeah. Well, it depends who it was. If it was someone that really deserved it. No, it's not about how you do it. It's about the manner. It's about making the decision. You don't have to be rude to somebody to get rid of them. You can give them the old one I've told you before, which is, I don't know how we'll get along without you, but as from Monday we're going to try. That sentiment is a nice way to deploy.
But on Watford and the Pozzos specifically, does this not show you cannot sack your way to safety?
Okay. I'm not sure that, again, I go back to the characterisation of it. You sack people because the previous person isn't doing a job. Everybody gets sacked. So you could argue that Manchester United can't sack their way to success because they've sacked 5 managers since Alex Ferguson left.
But what was the job at Watford? What was written on the tin? What did they demand? Keep us up.
To try and stay in the division. That's
basically it.
To try and there's a reasonable.
So you've got a season to do it.
So Watford would have a reasonable expectation of
not 3 months.
Watford would have a reasonable expectation of being relegated. They're realists,
right? So no matter what, Mr. Xisco Munoz, you're in for the long haul. The long haul might just be a season.
Well, they wanted to give themselves a better chance, and there's no point if you get into if you've got a guy that's done well in the Championship, got the other Championship. But there's a vast difference between a Championship manager and a Premier League manager. Ian Dowie was a Championship manager. When he got into the Premier League, it was too much for him. Right? And I should have taken him out. When you got Watford get into from the Championship, you land in the Premier League, there's a different gravy required. Sean Dyche is probably a Premier League manager that may yet relegate Burnley, but that's as much to do with the resource around him and the ownership model as it is to do with him. Because eventually, if you're getting nip and tuck because everyone's spending more money than you and getting better players, eventually the gap is going to close and you're going to get relegated. But in the Watford situation, a guy comes up, can't cut it, get rid of him. But then it's that appointment. The next appointment is the one you've got to look at carefully. And there's not a parallel universe where you can advocate for the appointment of Claudio Ranieri to solve that problem. You can advocate for Roy Hodgson coming in October, November, but maybe Roy Hodgson didn't want a job in October, November.
You regret any of the sackings at Palace?
I never sacked anybody that didn't deserve it.
Was everyone the right decision then for the longer term and in the longer interest of Palace?
They weren't the right decision, were they? I mean, ultimately, if I sack somebody, if anyone sacks anybody, it's as much a failing of theirs as well, because they couldn't get from the person what they wanted when they saw them and interviewed them and employed them.
Okay, well, Watford still fighting for the Premier League lives. Roy's still there, but who's after Roy? We will watch with interest.
Jim White and Simon Jordan, Monday to Thursday morning, 10 till 1. On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.